Dating during the COVID-19 pandemic, it's not simple, but it's definitely possible. A lot of people have really struggled during this pandemic. And so if you're feeling that way, just remember you're not alone. A lot of people out there, have been looking for more human connection during these past 18 months. The good news is that we have tools that can help you reduce your risk of either getting COVID or passing on COVID to other people. Number one is to recognize that getting vaccinated is the single most important thing we can do to reduce our risk. And if both people are vaccinated, that helps tremendously. The second thing to remember is whenever possible, being in outdoor settings versus indoor settings really reduces our risk of transmission. And finally, keep in mind testing. Testing is a tool that we can use, especially rapid tests that give you back results within 10 to 15 minutes. Just know that getting a same-day rapid test can give you and your partner some assurance that you're at low risk for spreading the virus. If you are feeling sick before a date, it's important to know that COVID-19 can present with many different types of symptoms, and you might have one of them. So for example, people with COVID often get a cough, or they can get a runny nose. Sometimes they may feel short of breath. Sometimes they may just feel incredibly fatigued. They may have a fever. They may lose their sense of smell or taste. There are more. And if you have any of these symptoms, then it's important that you not go on that date if you haven't been tested. And if you could get tested, for example, within 24 hours of your date, that would be ideal. Figuring out when to go in for that first kiss is always a bit awkward. And what's particularly hard is asking questions in that moment. If you want to understand what somebody else's risk is, your partner's risk, there are a few things that are really helpful to know. Number one, are they vaccinated or not? Number two, do they live with or work with or study with, groups of people who may not be vaccinated, in which case they may be at increased risk? And third, do they take precautions like wearing masks when they're in outdoor settings with other people in public spaces? And then finally, if you're particularly concerned, you can always talk about testing as a tool. It's having these conversations that will help you understand what their risk is, what you're comfortable with, and that's how you can move together as a unit in a way that's most comfortable for both of you. A lot of people are wondering how they can stay safe. They may have folks at home who are vulnerable. Maybe they have kids who are not vaccinated. Maybe they have a relative at home who's immunocompromised. Maybe they themselves have some health problems, and they might be wondering what kind of precautions they should take. So don't feel embarrassed to bring up key questions about safety, because just know that a lot of people are thinking about this. First, everyone's got to ask these questions in the style that they feel most comfortable with. But the most important thing to do is to be respectful in the conversation and to ask open-ended questions, to solicit input, recognizing people may have different points of view on things. But if I was having the conversation, I might start off the conversation by saying, hey, look, I know that we're dating in the middle of a pandemic, and I have some questions and general concerns about safety that I wanted to talk through. Would that be okay? I'd love to, if we could talk a little bit about what safety measures we're taking in our own lives to reduce our risk of getting COVID, just so I have a sense. I think the last thing I would say is just to be mindful about judgment, right? Nobody wants to be judged for the choices that they make. We don't know their background and their history. So trying as much as possible to remain free from judgment, both in the content of what we say as well as in our tone and facial expression, is also really important. We know that with the Delta variant, which is really transmissible, that sometimes even fully vaccinated people who have breakthrough infections may be able to transmit the infection. So even though it's lower risk if you're both vaccinated, if you are in an indoor setting, then the safest thing to do would be to wear masks, especially if you're in an area where there's substantial or high spread of the virus. Yeah, so this is a really important question, and it gets to the point that all of us have different levels of risk because our circumstances are different. I have two small kids at home, for example, who are too young to be vaccinated. So I'm particularly careful when I go outside. Even though I'm vaccinated and I know I'll probably be fine, even if I get a breakthrough infection, I don't want to bring it home and transmit it to my children who are unvaccinated. So I tend to take a little more in the way of precautions when I leave the house. Number one, our relationships are still important. If anything, they're more important than ever. The pandemic has taught us that. So we don't have to give up on dating or relationships. We've got to pursue them. But number two, we have tools for how to make dating safer during the pandemic. The important thing is to understand what those tools are so we can use them and talk to our partners about them. Number three, communication with our partners have become more important than ever. It's critical to have those conversations up front. To let people know what your risk is, ask people what their risk is, understand what steps are being taken on both of your sides to help reduce risk so you can continue dating in a way that both of you feel safe. And so putting all of this together, we know that relationships are critical. We can still pursue them during this pandemic. And doing so is actually an incredibly important part of making sure that we're healthy, strong, and happy during this pandemic and long afterward.